السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. Before we begin, just again want to reiterate what I mentioned yesterday about the adab of being in a majlis. So bottom line, we come in a way that we are physically pure, so we're in a state of wudu, and one that in which we are spiritually pure as well. Having done istighfar, having intended to focus on what's being presented and to gain from the benefit of being in the company of the Shaykh. In addition to that, as I mentioned yesterday, just as a reiteration, just keep in mind that we are in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that has its own adab, and all of that applies as well. And being that we are guests in this masjid as well, we abide by the rules of the administration, and one of those is to not bring any food or drink. If you become tired or sleepy, you can go up to the third floor and eat or drink something there in the meantime, and then come back downstairs again. Inshallah, this session will only go on for about an hour or so, and then we'll have a small break before Dhuhr, and then we'll continue afterwards. When you walk in on the door, there is a QR code for asking questions or submitting questions. That link has also been emailed out at the beginning of every session, including right now. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to put it in there. Even as you're sitting here, if you think of something, just drop it in very quickly. Inshallah, later today we'll have a Q&A session that we'll take from those submissions. So if you'd like to ask something, then just make sure you put it there, inshallah. Sure. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. The need to cure spiritual ailments. In the last assembly, we have come to the conclusion that a human being is more than just a mass of flesh and bones. Rather, its exquisiteness consists of the secret world within its outward bodily structures, which has been interpreted as the heart, soul, and other similar terms. Then, in a tradition quoted by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih, it has been mentioned that the soundness of a person's actions or the corruption thereof depends on the soundness or corruption of his innermost feelings and emotions. Today we shall learn that just like a human being's material body is at times healthy and sound, and at other times it is afflicted by disease, in that in order to keep it healthy, one resorts to a nutritious diet, fresh air, and so on, and that one uses medicines to rid the body of diseases. Similarly, one needs to look after one's spiritual health. Spiritual health is indicated by the recognition of one's Lord and Creator, by frequently remembering Him and being grateful to Him, and by obeying His commandment. The sickness of one's soul consists of being neglectful of the Almighty and failing to obey Him. In the Holy Quran is mentioned, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادُهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. There is disease in their hearts, the disease of infidelity and disobedience, so Allah further increased their malady. Infidelity, polytheism, hypocrisy, jealousy, malice, pride, arrogance, greed, parsimony, love of fame, love of wealth, and so on are spiritual ailments. And spiritual health means to recognize one's Lord and Creator, to know that benefit and harm, ease and distress are in His hands alone, to be grateful for His blessings, and to be patient if afflicted by an adversity. To trust Him in all one's affairs, to hope for His mercy, and to fear His punishment, to seek His goodwill and pleasure, and to abide by the divine ordinances with utmost sincerity. The Holy Quran is the perfect remedy for all things of spiritual ailments. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we reveal of the Quran that which is a healing and a mercy for the believers. And elsewhere has been mentioned, قُلْ هُوَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا هُدًى وَشِفَاءً. Say the Quran is a guidance and cure for those who believe. There is, however, a big difference between physical and spiritual diseases. The former can be perceived through one's senses, meaning the physical, and they can be diagnosed through checking the pulse and examination, and so on. They can be cured through medicines or surgery. Spiritual diseases, however, are invisible. Neither a person's pulse nor his bodily discharges indicate the presence of such a disease. Similarly, they cannot be cured through medicine, surgery, or a change in diet. Such diseases can only be diagnosed and treated according to the principles laid down in the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam contain a complete course of reformation, whether it be with regard to one's outward actions, beliefs, or character. Whatever degree of perfection a believer has attained from the days of the companions and those who followed them up to the righteous luminaries of our modern times is only because of their adherence to those reformatory principles. They were not only perseverant with regard to their outer forms of worship, prayer, such as praying, fasting, pilgrimage, almsgiving, but also with regard to inward acts such as sincerity, truthfulness, belief in the oneness of Allah, humbleness, patience, gratitude, placing their trust in Allah, abstemiousness, and so on. Just as they saved themselves from committing outward sins like theft, fraud, indecency, dishonesty, they also abstained from inward sins like pride, arrogance, love for wealth and fame, looking down upon others, parsimony, greed, and so on, knowing them to be as unlawful and prohibited as any outward sin. The scholars of this ummah have, for the benefit of the public, rearranged the complex teachings of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah by dividing the same into various sciences and branches. Outward actions like prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, zakah, marriage, divorce, and other dealings are the subject of fiqh, the science of jurisprudence. And as far as inward actions are concerned, matters related to faith are being dealt with by the science of aqaid or creeds, and spiritualism or tasawwuf deals with morals, manners, and ethical behavior. Some scholars have combined these aspects of knowledge in their writings. Allama Ibn Subki has in the epilogue of his book, Jam' al-Jawami', which is a famous treatise of usul al-fiqh, mentioned also some details concerning tasawwuf, ethics, and inward actions. Imam Qushayri, rahmatullah alayh, in his treatise Qushayriyah, Hazrat Suhrawardi rahmatullah alayh in his Awarif al-Ma'arif, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh in his Ihya Ulum, and many others have in their respective writings discussed the importance of inward actions and their reformation at length. And in our modern age, Hakim al-Ummah, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah, has written a number of extremely comprehensive books on this subject, such as At-Takashuf, At-Tasarruf, Masail al-Suluk, Ta'lim al-Din, Qasd al-Sabil, and many others. But since quite some time, due to the Muslims' general negligence of their religion and the related sciences, the majority of Muslims has become estranged from all branches of knowledge of their faith, particularly the one mentioned last, which relates to the reformation of inward actions. This has been so gravely neglected that not only the public has, even a greater number of scholars have become unmindful thereof. People think that religion consists of only performing a few outward actions. Virtues like sincerity, truthfulness, reliance on the Almighty, knowing Him to be one, patience, gratitude, contentment, abstinence, and piety have lost their meaning, and people are no longer concerned to reform themselves, to rid themselves of such spiritual diseases like love for fame, love for wealth, arrogance, pride, anger, malice, jealousy, and so on. In this regard, I therefore address first of all my own person, and then other people of knowledge, that we have adopted a kind of religious appearance, that we are being considered as abiding by the holy law, at least as far as outward actions are concerned, and that we strive to keep away from all such sins which the common people think to be an insult to our status as scholars, and those who get involved in these sins are viewed with disdain by the people. But unfortunately, we make no effort to save ourselves from spiritual vices which are in fact far more destructive than other sins. We should ask ourselves that if our prayers, fasts, and other acts of worship, or our avoiding sins like theft, obscenity, pleasure-seeking, visiting cinemas, and so on, are indeed resulting from our concern for the hereafter and our fear of the Almighty, then how come that we are without the least degree of worry involved in sins much greater than the ones mentioned above, and from the commission of which neither our fear of Allah nor our concern for the hereafter prevents us? Might it not be possible that our outward actions are not purely for Allah, that they are rather the outcome of our vocational mindset, that they are not related to Allah and the hereafter, but rather to our profession? That if we fail to be punctual in our prayers and other religious observances, or happen to penetrate any outward injunction of the holy law, we might lose our post as lecturer, mufti, imam, khatib, and so on. This is why we avoid only such sins which cannot be hidden under our robes and turbans and the dignity of our profession. Spiritual vices, however, are easily screened by our outward appearance. That is why we deem them so trifle. This kind of thinking is the only reason why our educational and missionary efforts remain fruitless, rather than having become a source of contention and all kinds of tribulations. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. History bears witness to the fact that only the educational, missionary, and reformatory efforts of such scholars had a lasting impact, whose hearts were full of piety, sincerity, and fear of Allah. On the other hand, how many research scholars and investigators are there who have passed into oblivion? Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-huda wa-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. Topic?
Let me briefly introduce the topic that was being discussed. We started talking about it yesterday, just like the first chapter of the book. As we established and we understand that human beings have two different elements of our life: physical body and the ruh that gives life to the body. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about both of these elements of our body, gives us a lot of detail about it in Quran. The basic information that we need to know is خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ, created you from dust. That's part of our earthly portion of the body. So our eyes, our ears, our tongue, our brain, our heart, hands, feet, everything. Everything is from turab, from dust. And therefore, when we die, they place it back into the dirt where it came from. مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ. Ruh doesn't come from the dirt. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. Once I perfect the shape of the body and I blow my ruh into him. My ruh doesn't mean, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, portion of the God came out and then went into Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. It means a ruh that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not from here, it's from the heaven. Allah created it right over there and He placed it in the body of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, by which Adam alayhi salatu wasalam had his life and his ruh into that body. As this body comes from the ground, earthly element, all the needs of this body come also from the ground. Every need that we have for our body, nothing comes from Jannah, from paradise, from heaven, from skies. It comes from the ground. Even the water that is coming as a rain, we know is a circulation of the water that is from the ground. It's not something that is, there is a pipe from the heaven that is coming to the cloud and then from the cloud we are getting it. It's from this earth. Be it our necessities of life, food, drink, or health issues, all of our medications, items of beauty, creams, lotions, soap, shampoos, whatever. Everything that we need for our physical body, the source of it is the ground. Our beautiful perfumes, fragrances, all from the ground. Flowers, different things that grow from the ground. Everything comes from the ground. The other element of the body is ruh. This ruh did not come from the ground. Therefore, all of these things cannot be used for the ruh. Totally two different worlds. How could you take a normal vitamin and give it to the ruh to become strong? It's not going to get any nourishment from it. Because it doesn't come from there, is not going to be nourished from there. So then, all the same needs of the ruh need to be fulfilled from the heaven. Nourishment, health issues, all the matter of beauty, everything for the ruh will come from the heaven. So now, if we want our body, our ruh to survive and to be strong, we need to get that nourishment for it from that comes from up there. What is that nourishment? Salah is the nourishment of our ruh. Quran tilawah is the nourishment of the ruh. Dhikr of Allah is the nourishment of the ruh. And this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith. مثل الذي يذكر ربه والذي لا يذكر ربه كمثل الحي والميت. The example of a person who remembers Allah is a living person, and a person who doesn't remember Allah is just like a dead person. Hayy wal mayyit. We think that is just as an exaggeration or is just as example. No. Prophet ﷺ does not exaggerate. He tells us the exact reality. He says, when you remember Allah, your ruh will remain alive to understand the realities of life, to cooperate with this world and know what is happening around you. This is when you do the dhikr of Allah, you see the reality of things. But when a person forgets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ruh is dead. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the people of Iman from having the dead ruh. But just for a split of a second, when we think about it, it really shakes you up. That God forbid. Imagine if there was no wudu in our life, and then there was no salah, and there was no Quran, and there was no tilawah, and there was no sadaqah khairat, and there was none of these ibadat were there in our life. There was no hajj, there was no umrah. What we would be without all of these things? Useless life. Really. When you think about it, it shakes you up like, subhanallah, like what I'm going to be living for then? If I don't have none of these things, if there is no Quran, there is no dhikr, there is no tasbih, there is no Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in my life, then what do I have? Nothing. كَمَثَلِ الْحَيِّ وَالْمَيِّتِ. It's just like living and dead. We will be dead, worse than dead. If you think about it, even dead is a good thing to have. Dead body is still better than a person living and none of these things with that. What a great blessing to have these things. So anyway, this is the nourishment of the ruh. Even the treatment of the ruh comes from up there. It will not come from here. We take Tylenol, Advil, whatever medications, all the medications for different diseases. Same thing. We have different diseases of the ruh, which is arrogance, jealousy, hatred, so many. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, Al-Bakhilu ba'idun min Allahi qareebun min al-nar. A person who's miserly is far from Allah and close to Jahannam. Was-sakhiyu qareebun min Allah ba'idun min al-nar. And a person who is generous, he's close to Allah, far from Jahannam. All of these are indications of our ruh and the different qualities of the ruh. So, even our ruh gets sick and we all feel. Now remember, this is a very, very long topic. We can keep on talking about it. But when we live our life here, one of the two elements of this, our life, will rule our life. Either we live according to the need of the body or we will live according to the need of the ruh. Although we will fulfill the needs of both, but one of them will be the ruling portion of our body, of our life here. Either the physical body or the ruh. Either we live according to the needs of the body and we neglect the ruh, or we live according to the needs of the ruh and then we don't really care too much about the body. What does this mean? For us, I feel tired, I cannot wake up for Salat al-Fajr. Why? Body is very tired. What is tired? Is the ruh tired? No. The body is tired, isn't it? Body is tired. I'm not able to wake up. Now body is ruling the ruh, tells the body, tells the ruh, sleep. I need to sleep. The ruh says, no, I want my nourishment. I'm hungry. I want to get up. I want to pray. And the body says, go to sleep. And the ruh has to give in. That's it, give up. No. The body doesn't allow me, I'm not going to get up. Who's ruling the life? The physical body. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the other hand, we find him with his swollen feet. This is the hadith in the Sahih and everywhere. Swollen feet. And is still standing in Qiyamul Layl. Ya Rasulullah, you're standing up the whole night. وَقَدْ غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَكَ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِن ذَنْبِكَ وَمَا تَأَخَّرَ. How is he able to stand on those swollen feet? He's not just tired. He's not just exhausted. Feet are swollen and is still able to stand in Qiyamul Layl, not just Fard Salah. Before that, and 100 times before that, we will pull a chair and pray Fard on this chair. And he's standing in Qiyamul Layl, not for Inna A'tayna and Qul Huwallahu Ahad, reciting ajza of Quran. What gives him that strength? Ruh is ruling the body. Ruh says, I want to pray. Body says, I'm tired. Look at my feet. Ruh says, I don't care. You have to carry me. You have to get up. One of the two will rule. Who will rule? The stronger of the two. The stronger of the two will rule. If our ruh is stronger, we'll tell the body, you have to follow me. You have to get me what I need to get done. If the body is stronger and ruh is weaker, the body will rule and will tell the ruh, you have to follow me. If I don't feel like doing it, you're not going to do it. I don't feel like reading Quran, go to sleep, go to play, go do something else. But I don't feel like Quran. I don't feel like dhikr. I don't feel like salah. I don't like. So now, ruh. So strengthening the ruh will give us the ability to live for akhirah. Strengthening the body will make us live for dunya. That's the difference. And from this we can see what a great difference between the two lives. What a great difference on who rules out of the two. Make your ruh strong through the ibadah, through the zikr, through salah, through dua, pressuring yourself to get up. Just like a stronger physical body, you need exercise. You need exercise. And with this exercise, and how much money do we spend on our physical body? For our home, for our comfort in the house, our cars, our medications, treatments, and how much we worry about each and every portion of our body. How much we are spending on this body. We don't even spend 10% of that on our ruh. Whereas ruh gets satisfied even with 10% of it. So, negligence to the ruh will make the body rule our life, and then our life becomes only for dunya. And we become the people of dunya only. This is the summary of this. And from this we can understand how important it is for every person to have time to work on our ruh element. At the end, remember, when the person dies, what is the death? The body dies because ruh left the body. Now the ruh is alive. Ruh is alive. Ruh never dies. And it will never die. Death comes to the physical body only. Ruh will remain alive. If our body was the main element of our life, as soon as we leave the world, we are done. If ruh was the main element, then even after leaving this world, the person will enjoy the blessings of akhirah. Why? Because ruh is alive. We see in the hadith, Sunan al-Tirmizi, a sahabi comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, I was traveling, nighttime, I stationed somewhere, and to my surprise, I was hearing some recitation from under the ground. So when I paid attention, it was someone reciting Surah Mulk. And I heard full Surah Mulk being recited from under the ground. It was the qabr of someone. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, that is the Sahabi of Abdullah ibn Milhan radiyallahu anhu, who loved this surah in his life, and he used to recite it every night. Allah allowed him to recite it in his qabr also. This is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, which is telling us that ruh is so strong that continues with these things even after leaving the world. You see some of the insects, when you kill them, the tail keeps on moving for a long time after you have separated from the rest of the... So it has that life in it that makes it keep on moving. This ruh will stay alive to a certain extent and enjoy the ibadah, enjoy Quran, enjoy salah. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in the hadith which is in Sahih Muslim, رَأَيْتُ مُوسَى قَائِمًا فِي قَبْرِهِ يُصَلِّي. I saw Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was standing praying salah in his qabr. Is he getting any reward for praying those salah? Say Musa alayhi salatu wasalam performed salah from the time he passed away and he left this world until the day of Qiyamah. He performed prayer, salah in his qabr. Is there any reward? No reward after you leave this life. Is only the reward of sadaqah jariyah. But you pray in the qabr, or that Sahabi Abdullah radiyallahu anhu who's reciting Surah Mulk in his qabr, is he getting any reward for reciting Surah Mulk? No, there is no reward for it. You left this world, records are closed. They are not reciting it for reward anymore. They're reciting it for enjoyment. They enjoyed salah, they will get salah over there. They enjoyed Quran, they will get to recite Quran over there. This is enjoyment over there. This is when the ruh is stronger.
The essence of tasawwuf and excesses committed in this regard.
We will keep on hearing the word tasawwuf. Let me very, very briefly explain the word. Shaykh Abul Hasan Ali al-Nadawi rahimahullah, one of the very, very famous late scholars, respected by, alhamdulillah, Muslim all around the world. He wrote a beautiful article on this, in which he says that some people, they get annoyed by hearing the word tasawwuf. But when you present the details of it without mentioning the name and the title, you tell them that, according to Deen, according to Islam, you have to have ihsan, you have to have tazkiyah, you have to purify your heart from arrogance, from hatred, from all. And they agree to all of this. Then we need treatment to all of these. We need to strengthen our ruh. They agree to everything. And when you tell them, you should look into tasawwuf, they say, no, tasawwuf, I don't want to have nothing to do with tasawwuf. He says it's only the fight on the title. So, and then titles are not something that we should always fight about. Use some other name, use different name, as long as we agree to the ingredients and to the element. So, as far as the topic itself, everyone agrees. No Muslim will disagree. It's only, can we use this title or we shouldn't use this title? And of course, that's with every field, be it Asma'ul Rijal, the field of Asma'ul Rijal, which is the main field of authentication of the Ahadith. You don't find that field in the Ahadith. You don't find that name in the Ahadith. Same thing, Usul al-Fiqh, Usul al-Hadith, Usul al-Tafsir. In fact, the word Tafsir, you don't find these words, these terminologies in the Quran or in a Hadith. So these are terminologies used to identify the topic. If someone doesn't agree with that name, use some other name is fine. But we all agree to the need of the main subject and the topic itself.
In our last assemblies, we have come to know that what we call a human being is in fact a compound of body and soul. The Holy Quran and the Sunnah, which contain the outlines for man's prosperity and success in both worlds, addresses both aspects of human existence. For the sake of convenience, matters related to outward actions such as worship, marriage, divorce, day-to-day dealings have been compiled under the head of fiqh, in other words, the science of jurisprudence. Whereas matters related to spirit and soul, like tenets of faith and ethics, are subject of aqa'id and tasawwuf, in other words, beliefs and spiritualism. In fact, these are various aspects of the teachings of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. They are distinct from each other only in as so far as hands, feet, eyes, nose, heart, liver, intestines, and so on, are different limbs and organs, but only together they make up a perfect human being. They are dependent on each other. None of them can exist on its own. The existence of one does not exclude the existence of the other, nor does the functioning of one cause the malfunctioning of the other. Similarly, there is no doubting the fact that aqa'id, fiqh, and tasawwuf are separate and distinct fields of knowledge, but it is a prerequisite for a perfect human being or a believer to appreciate these sciences as a whole living according to the Holy Quran and the Sunnah is not possible until one puts all these aspects of knowledge into practice. Accepting only one aspect and rejecting the other is as destructive as preserving one's faculty of hearing and allowing one's eyes to go to waste. Considering fiqh and tasawwuf as opponents of each other is like considering one's eyes and ears to be in opposition to each other. Only those noble souls in whom Allah has united all those teachings of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah are in a position to comprehend the reality of the same, and their saying in this regard are instrumental to appreciate the lofty nature of those teachings. Shah Waliullah Rahmatullah alayh has said, Sharia without tariqah, in other words tasawwuf, is mere philosophy, whereas tariqah without sharia amounts to sheer heresy. In this simple sentence, Shah Waliullah has disclosed the reality of those fields of knowledge. How many hypocrites were very well acquainted with the injunctions of the Holy Law, in other words, those pertaining to outward actions. And even today, there are hundreds of Jews and Christians, atheistic Orientalists, who have studied the Islamic sciences in depth, who have got full knowledge thereof, yet it is nothing but mere philosophy for them, not religion. And it will become religion for them. It will not become religion for them as long as they do not firmly believe those injunctions to be indeed the truth, as long as they do not abide by the injunctions of the Holy Law, whether these pertain to inward or outward actions. This is why mere knowledge of the law, no matter how perfect this knowledge might be, is no indicator of spiritual greatness, nor does it have any weight in the sight of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, acting contrary to the injunctions of the Sharia in the name of tariqah or tasawwuf is nothing but heresy. Hazrat Qadi Sana'ullah Panipati has said, no one's soul can be cleansed unless his body be cleansed. A renowned scholar and Sufi Shaykh of the 4th century after Hijrah, Imam Abu al-Qasim Qushayri, left a message for his contemporaries among the mashayikh of Tasawwuf, a detailed treatise named Risala Qushayriya, which is considered the basis of all subsequent writings on this subject. In the preamble of this treatise, he has clearly shown that tariqah is nothing independent from sharia, rather that means strict adherence to the Holy Law and the Sunnah, in proof of which he has cited several luminaries of tasawwuf. In the first chapter, he has explained that after the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of people were those who benefited from his company, and that the excellence of those people consisted in their being sahabis, in other words, companions of the Holy Messenger. And those who had acquired religious knowledge and the ability to act accordingly from the noble companions, these people are called tabi', or successors. And the generation thereafter are known as tabi', or those who followed the successors. All of them strictly abided by the Holy Law and the Sunnah, duly regarding all the sacred injunctions concerning the inward and outward deeds. They had united in themselves both aspects of Sharia and Tariqah, to such a degree of perfection never attained thereafter. Their honorary appellations did not consist of any reference to their scholarly achievements. Rather, they were known as Sahabi, Tabi', and Tabi'. The generations who followed them had adopted different ways. Some of them mainly occupied themselves with the acquisition and dissemination of religious knowledge, as were with the literary compositions and completions. They too had reached perfection as far as knowledge of spiritual matters and inward deeds are concerned, but they were less occupied therewith. They had become experts of sciences pertaining to outward matters, and they were referred to as alim, muhaddith, mufassir, and faqih, depending on the subject in which they had specialized themselves. Others had dedicated themselves fully to the practical aspects of religion, so they were called abid and zahid, but yet their knowledge of the sharia was in no way deficient. Then, however, some people had joined this group of worshippers and ascetics who deviated from the ways of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who got involved in all kinds of innovations. Thus, different groups came into being. In each group, there were some people who became known as worshippers and ascetics. At that time, those people who shared the beliefs held by the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and who, besides strictly abiding by the injunctions of the Holy Law, had focused on worship, asceticism, and perfecting their inner states were referred to as Ahlut Tasawwuf. And thus, already before the end of the 2nd century after Hijrah, these senior mashayikh became known as Ahlut Tasawwuf, who, along with firmly adhering to the outward injunctions of the Sharia and the Sunnah, took utmost care to guard every single breath, to continuously engage themselves in dhikrullah, and to keep away from anything leading to neglectfulness and oblivion. Imam Qushayri has put it thus: then some innovations appeared among the Muslims, and every sect began to claim that among them too are sects so inclined to them. At that time, for the sake of distinction, those Ahlus Sunnah who followed this particular way, who in order to strengthen their relation would guard every single breath of theirs, and who would protect their hearts from being contaminated with anything leading to negligence, were called Ahlul Tasawwuf. They were known by this name already before the 2nd century of Hijrah. After Hijrah. From the above excerpt is learnt that during the age of the pious ancestors, the Salaf, only such people became known as Sufis and Ahl al-Tasawwuf, who strictly abided by the holy law, meaning the Sharia, avoiding all kinds of innovations. Those who subjected themselves merely to all kinds of spiritual exercises and asceticism without following the Sunnah, they were not called Sufis. Rather, this name was a means to distinguish the former from the latter. Moreover, the only difference between the scholars and the Ahlul Tasawwuf was that due to a general decrease of stamina, it was no longer possible for them to reach the perfection with regard to outward and inward deeds, or to equally dedicate themselves to both aspects at the same time. So the scholars occupied themselves mainly with teaching, writing, issuing verdicts, and academic criticism, and established madaris for that purpose. The Sufis, on the other hand, focused on reforming their inner state of being, as well as that of their brothers in faith. For this purpose, khanqah were established. It was merely what one could call the division of labor, completely void of mutual differences, because neither were the scholars unmindful of their inner state of being, nor were the Sufis unacquainted with various injunctions of the Holy Law, nor would they consider each other's field of activity as less important than their own. But things changed as with time went by. There was a considerable decline of experts of both fields. On one hand, the scholars began to neglect dhikrullah. Their concern for the hereafter decreased, and their love for Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the utmost limit of which is prerequisite for the station of perfect faith, became deficient too. The Sufis, on the other hand, became less and less well acquainted with the injunctions of the Sharia. There was a notable deficiency in their implementing the Sunnah and the Sharia. As a result thereof, the institution of madaris and khanqahs became rivals, finding faults with each other. The Ahlul Madaris considered knowledge of some legal intricacies to be the pinnacle of perfection, and similarly, the people in the khanqahs thought about some routine set of recitals and optional prayers. In the madaris, hardly any importance was given to the inner deeds and actions, whereas the khanqahs distanced themselves more and more from the Sunnah and the Sharia, so much that tasawwuf remained nothing more than the name of a few rituals which had no basis in the Sharia. Thus, the Ummah was at a loss in two ways. One, that these two groups who were in charge of reforming the Muslim community, and their suffering was already a tragedy great enough. Two, that their differences and their mutual rivalry had divided the Muslims. What was even worse, among the Muslims, many people became disgusted with both groups. They, however, lacked knowledge and aptitude to properly understand the teachings of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah, and to put the same into practice. They were comparable to a patient who has no idea how to treat his ailment and yet loathes doctors and physicians. As a result of their negative attitude towards these scholars of religion, they contented themselves with mere reading of relevant literature to acquire religious knowledge. This resulted in their adopting certain opinions regarding a number of Quranic masail, which differed considerably from the views held by the remaining members of this ummah. This caused yet another problem, namely, that many matters pertaining to religion were modified and amended. Then there were some people who made the scholars the object of their criticism, even to the extent of mocking and ridiculing them, others who did so with the honorable Sufis, and again others who did so with both. According to one prediction made by Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah would send onto this ummah at the end of every century such a scholar or a group of scholars who would resolve such perplexities and give new life to religion. In not so distant past, the service was rendered by Mujaddid al-Fithani, rahmatullah alayh, and in India by Sayyid Ahmed Sahib Bareilwi. Then amongst our elders, those who established Darul Ulum Deoband, not only was their knowledge of the injunctions of the Sharia sheerly unmatched, they moreover abounded in spiritual qualities. The Darul Ulum founded by them was therefore a perfect fusion between madrasa and khanqa. My honorable father, Maulana Muhammad Yasin Sahib, rahmatullah alayh, was born in the same year in which the foundation of Darul Ulum Deoband was laid. He says, I've witnessed that time when the whole staff of Darul Ulum, from its president to the in charge, from the sweeper to the gatekeeper, everyone was sahibun nisbah, a friend of Allah. A gatekeeper was always engaged in dhikrullah the entire day in the lecture halls as well as in the dormitories. You could hear the students discuss academic intricacies, and at night you would hear everyone reciting Holy Quran as well as the enthralling sounds of dhikrullah. In the beginning of Darul Ulum, in the beginning, the Darul Ulum did not have a mosque of its own, so the teachers and the students used to offer their prayers in the nearby mosques. It was during the student days of this most honorable servant that the masjid of Darul Ulum was built. Maulana Mahmud al-Hassan rahmatullah alayh converted the year of its construction into the following phrase. He said, I behold a khanqah in this institution of learning. If one adds up the numerical value of each letter in this phrase, one gets the year in which the masjid was built. The above phrase captures beautifully the spirit of Darul Ulum, and the whole world can see its blessed outcome. Hundreds of scholars who have graduated from here have, along with sound religious knowledge, also acquired spiritual perfection. Back to their homelands, they would awaken their compatriots, their religious consciousness, and successfully counter the tempest of ignorance and innovation. This institution brought forth such outstanding scholars, each of whom is like shining, dazzling star, illuminating the firmament of the whole world of Islam. Among them were luminaries such as Shaykh al-Hind, Maulana Mahmud Hassan, rahmatullah alayh, and Hakim al-Ummah, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, rahmatullah alayh. These few examples are already more than sufficient proof.
Although I wasn't planning to say at least too much, if nothing, but there are some very, very important points here for us to understand, to remember. Take an example of a salah. When we perform salah, with the physical body, we are performing our prayer. So, there is qiyam, there is ruku', there is sujood, every part of the salah is there. This is my physical salah. What are my feelings behind these physical actions? So these are the two different elements of my life and two different elements of my ibadah based on my life. So physical body is performing the actions and spiritually, what are my feelings behind the qiyam, behind the ruku', behind the sujood, and this full salah? I perform my salah and no feeling behind it. You go and ask any scholar, alim, mufti, muhaddis, whatever you want to call them, sheikh, imam, that I performed the salah in this way. I had no feeling behind it, but I performed my salah. Was my salah valid? Sure, your salah was valid. But from the spiritual point of view, it wasn't really the true salah that Sharia requires from me. When I'm reciting some ayat related to Jannah, Jahannam, Akhirah, there should be some feeling behind it. I should feel it. When I'm in sujood, the least is I don't understand Arabic. I don't understand a word of Arabic language. I don't know what I'm reciting. But at least when I'm in sujood, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, there has to be some feeling behind it. What I'm doing right now. Tasawwuf will, or tazkiyah, or suluk, or tariqah, whatever name we give it, that will deal with the feelings behind these actions. Fiqh will handle the physical actions only. This is why now when you open the book of fiqh and try to find a chapter on what feeling should I have in ruku', in sujood, how to develop that feeling, or I cannot concentrate and I start getting so many thoughts about my work, my home, other things, and I want to open up a book of fiqh to see how do I treat this, what's the remedy for it, what's the treat. I don't find nothing about it. Why? Is it that Sharia is not talking about it? It does, but not in this field. It's another field. This is the field of fiqh. So we need this and we need this. We need the physical action and we need the spirituality behind it for the salah to be a real salah. And this is just an example of salah. And you can apply this to every ibadah, a person performing tawaf. There are people who perform tawaf, keep on going around the Kaaba, keep on going around. MashaAllah, okay, I perform 100 tawaf today. Very beautiful, alhamdulillah. You got reward for every step that you're taking on. But are you going to take any benefit of this with you back home? If there was no feeling behind it, if it was only counting the steps, if it was only looking at your watch and seeing how much exercise I'm getting by this walk, then we are not taking anything back with us. You're getting that reward. May Allah bless the time that you spend over there. But outside of that, there is nothing. In order for you to carry someone with you from there back home and keep it with you, this is where you need this spirituality behind it, behind that ibadah. So this is real about, and this is true about every ibadah that we perform. We will have our physical body involved in it, but we want our ruh also to be part of it, to have that feeling. Sometime you cry before Allah. Sometime you feel that humbleness where you really squeeze your heart before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those feelings have to be there. Just like in our real life, the feeling between husband and wife, between parents and children, between people that are close, that there has to be feeling, okay, did he smile to me? Did he look at me? When he was talking to me, did he seem happy? Did he enjoy it? Did he say this word? Did he say, I love you? Did he say, I like this? Did he say, it's so tasty? Oh, this is so nice. Did you say something or no? You are that person who comes to Allahu Akbar. Okay. It's all about exercise and showing, okay, I'm something. And some people even will pull their stomach inside, chest out, so that people can see my muscles. It is. You see it sometimes. It's all about just physical action. The real ruh of the salah is missing. Okay, your fard is fulfilled. You are not getting any sin for missing a fard. But are you getting anything with you from the salah that will help you until the next salah and help you with the rest of your life? Maybe not. Why? The ruh element of it was missing. So create feelings behind the ibadah. Those feelings have to be there. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, that humbleness that you feel it on my heart. I'm talking to my Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala. And really, when you talk to Allah like this, you will find yourself sometimes saying, Ya Allah, I love you. I love you, Ya Allah. When was the last time you said to Allah, I love you? Ask yourself. That you really meant it and you said, I love you, Ya Allah. It has to be there. It's a living relation between a human being and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a dead relation. Ya Allah, with this ni'mah, I love you. I love you so much, Ya Allah. And then you find yourself falling into sujood. And you are just in the sujood. You don't feel like getting up. Ya Allah, with such a blessing, I don't want to leave. No, I'm not leaving this sajda. Ya Allah, I'm not leaving this sajda. It is that feeling. The feelings have to be there also. So how do we develop that? That is this field. When we are missing that, you won't find it in the books of fiqh. Now, this is of course the need that we understand and the benefit. And now I'm sure we all really want to get into it. But with this, alhamdulillah, we have another element, another part that we need to remember. And that is, sometimes people get into fiqh so much that they totally neglect tazkiyah. On the other hand, we find people, they get into tazkiyah so much that they neglect fiqh and hadith and tafsir and everything else. And this is one of the fields, the field of tasawwuf as we call it in our time. It's one of the fields where you can open a lot of doors of bid'at through this field. And people do use it, misuse it I should say. In order for me to pretend to be alim scholar, at least I need to have some knowledge. I have studied some books, took courses, whatever. Mainly in real sense, I have studied 7-8 years of hadith, tafsir, fiqh and usul and all of those things. But for me to become a sheikh, all I have to do is put a big jubba on, big imama, put my head down, and now everyone comes, be my student, and I'm a sheikh. What makes me sheikh? These students make me sheikh. This is when we start getting into the wrong track. It's a combination between the true ilm, knowledge of Quran, hadith, and between the field of tazkiyah. Because, see, in this field, it is a reality that if I just keep on sitting there doing dhikr and dhikr and dhikr, I will develop some feeling. It's the effect of that dhikr, I will develop the feeling. Now, is this feeling in accordance with the Quran and Hadith and the thoughts I'm getting, the visions I'm getting, the dreams I'm having, is it in accordance with the Quran and Hadith, or I should neglect them, they may be from shaitan? How do I differentiate if I don't have the true knowledge of Quran and Hadith? So we have to balance. We cannot cut this topic off. Who are you? I'm a Sufi. Sufi means I don't study Quran, I don't study tafsir, I don't study fiqh, I don't become alim. I just sit in one corner and that's it. No. Then this is a wrong direction. This is unfortunately happening a lot in our time with all Islamic sciences. There are people who would reject hadith, they reject tafsir, they reject fiqh, they reject all other Islamic sciences. They will reject the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They reject ilm al-tazkiyah and all of this. According to their claim, we just follow Quran. Now, we all know that this is totally dalal. But what do they call themselves? Ahlul Quran. Quraniyin. Quraniyin. Giving the message that, okay, we follow Quran, these people don't follow Quran. But in reality, these people are not Ahlul Quran, or their name is not the title that they have given themselves, is not because they follow Quran. It's because they reject the other things. Understand this topic. Understand this very, very important point here. They are calling themselves Ahlul Quran not because they follow Quran, because they reject everything other than Quran. There are people who call themselves Ahlul Hadith nowadays. It's not because we don't follow and others don't follow Hadith. It's because they reject fiqh and all other sciences, so now we are Ahlul Hadith. Ahlul Hadith means I'm not going to go by the book of tafsir, I'm not going to go by the books of fiqh, I'm not going to go by anything else, just Hadith. This is also dalal. Combine everything, keep everything in place. There is a balance in our Sharia. Ummatan wasatan. This is a balanced ummah. You keep the Quran, you keep the tafsir, you keep hadith, you keep seerah, you keep tazkiyah, you keep all of these sciences together, and then you balance the knowledge between all of these. Knowledge and practice would have to be balanced with all of these things. This is what makes Ahlul Sunnah to be the true Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The balance between all of these. We don't reject none of those. And it's not that we take one and we deny the other ones. I'm a Sufi, which means I reject the fiqh. No. Then you are not a Sufi really. I'm a faqih, that means I reject tafsir and hadith, then you are not a faqih. Once someone came and he, according to his understanding, he brought even a group of people with him. Very, very strong objection that, especially in those days in Pakistan, there was a big debate about including Shia as the fifth fiqh of Sharia. So they said, there are four fiqh, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali, and we should include, the Shias were claiming that we should be included also as the fifth sect of fiqh. So we had a discussion, and some people came and they had this objection, although they were from Ahlul Sunnah, of course, but they were so impressed with those what would we call them, propaganda, that if you have four fiqh, we have a fifth fiqh also. So anyway, when we had a discussion, and there were people from our major masajid that were involved in it, and they were impressed also. They went and they talked to the people in charge in the masajid, the directors of the masajid, some of the leaders in the masajid. Leaders mean imams in the masajid, who were imam but not really truly learned in their field. So anyway, when we started the discussion, I said to them, what are the bases of fiqh? What are the bases of fiqh? Everyone knows, every book of Usul al-Fiqh will start from the basis of fiqh are Quran, Hadith, and Ijma' of the Sahaba. And then Qiyas, that is based on these three things. So I said, as far as Quran, when we open their books, it's very clear in their books that this Quran is not the true Quran that we are to follow. We are following it only temporarily until the true Quran will come with Imam Ghaib, and then he will bring the Quran. So I said, there goes the Quran. According to them, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmizi, Nasai, Ibn Majah, and all of these, they don't mean anything because they are narrated on the authority of those Sahaba that according to them, those Sahaba were not trustworthy, to say the least, or in real sense, only 5 were Muslims, the rest of them are non-Muslims. There goes the hadith. Ijma' of who? Mainly is ijma' of the Sahaba. So we don't have Quran, we don't have the hadith, we don't have the Sahaba. Then where you get the fiqh from? And you want us to recognize this fiqh? This fiqh is based on what? I said, tomorrow, if someone else will come and he say, we are Yahud, and we wrote a book on fiqh on the basis of our Torah. All the rules of tahara and salah and zakah and our ibadat on the basis we have driven it from the divine book. Except as the 6th fiqh, are we going to accept them? Of course not, because our fiqh is based on Quran, Hadith, and Ijma'. And when you take away Quran, you take away Hadith, you take away Ijma', then there is no fiqh. There is no fiqh. So we cannot break these topics from each other. They all go together. Anyone that will take one science and deny the other ones, this is the main thing, and deny the other ones and the need of the other ones, that's dalal. I'm in the field of tasawwuf and tazkiyah, and we don't become ulama, we don't study Bukhari, we don't study tafsir, we don't study fiqh, then this is dalal. You have to balance it. The ilm of tazkiyah has a lot to do with feelings of human beings behind what you're doing. As I said, in salah is the feeling that's behind my ibadah. Tawaf, sa'i, tilawah of Quran, dua, dhikr, everything. It's the feeling that's behind my ibadah. And therefore, shaitan can play with these feelings. And a person sometimes cannot differentiate between a feeling that is from Allah and the feeling that is from shaitan. It could be that I'm having a beautiful dream that I'm in the Jannah and I'm enjoying the blessings of Jannah. And then in my dream, someone comes and tells me, you are one of the awliya and we have chosen you to be our wali. This is why we are taking you for a tour of the Jannah. And from now on, you don't have to pray no more. So right there, you know, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to pray till the end of his life, then who is me not that will be exempt from the salah? This is not tax exempt organization. Salah or exempt, mashallah, wali of Allah. So this is where, and this is of course the example I gave is very, very obvious. Sometimes it could be very deceiving that you cannot understand the difference between what is right and what is wrong, because it's all matter of feelings and these type of things. So therefore, we always have to make sure that whatever we are doing, we get it approved in the light of Quran, Hadith, and Fiqh. It has to be approved. Anything out of those lines, we should just stay away from it. Don't call it field of tasawwuf anymore. It has to be along those lines. Then it is approved. Outside of those lines is taking us to the error.
Inward deeds. In the last assemblies, it had been mentioned again and again that the Islamic injunctions are of two types, such as related to the human body, limbs, and organs, in other words, prayers, fast, hajj, zakat, sacrifice, charity, marriage, divorce, inheritance, trade, hire, dealings, livelihood, and so on, and others which are related to human beings' heart and soul, in other words, faith, or as an example, faith, sincerity, tawheed, truthfulness, love for Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, gratitude, patience, contentment, abstentiousness, and so forth. Rules and regulations concerning the soundness or corruption of the former type of deeds are being dealt with in the books of fiqh, whereas matters concerning the soundness or corruption of the latter type of deeds can be found in the books of tasawwuf. Religious injunctions of the first type are indeed a great hallmark of Islam, and injunctions of the second type are equally, if not much more important. But unfortunately, even religious-minded Muslims are deceived into thinking that Islam consists only of injunctions of the first type. Those of the second type are utterly neglected, as though they were superfluous, having no importance at all. This careless attitude is not only witnessed among the common Muslims, but also even scholars and students of the Islamic sciences are extremely unmindful of reforming their inner state of being. Therefore, the topic of today's assembly shall be inward deeds. A short list of inward deeds. Just as outward deeds are divided into fara'id, wajibat, mustahabbat, which, if duly performed, yield tremendous reward, and neglecting them yields divine wrath and punishment, and just as some matters are prohibited or execrable, and which, if committed, shall lead to severe chastisement, and the avoidance of which shall be rewarded, similar some inward deeds are of an obligatory nature, meaning fard or wajib. These are referred to as fada'il, or virtues. And likewise, there are some inward deeds which are absolutely unlawful and prohibited, and these are called raza'il, or vices. Below is given a short description of those virtues and vices, which shall, insha'Allah, be discussed in detail during the next assemblies. The greatest and most important obligation among the inward deeds is faith, and certain creeds related to it, which actually make a Muslim. But since this is the subject of a distinct type of discipline, in other words, ilm al-aqa'id, which constitutes a part of the curriculum taught in the religious seminaries and schools, we shall in this assembly rather divert our attention to other inward deeds, namely, he starts off with obligatory inward deeds: tawbah, sabr, shukr, raja, khawf, zuhd, tawheed, tawakkul, muhabba, rida, ikhlas, sidq al-amali. These are technical terms, and explanation of their meaning and how to attain them shall be given at some later time. Prohibited and unlawful inward deeds: anger, malice, jealousy, love for the world, parsimony, covetousness, love for fame, ostentation, pride, arrogance. These too are technical terms. What they imply and how to save oneself from these vices shall be discussed at some later time. An important difference between inward and outward deeds. In any of the last assemblies, it has been pointed out that there is an important difference between inward and outward deeds, namely, that one can actually observe outward deeds. Virtuous deeds like prayer, fast, hajj, zakat, and so on can be perceived. Similarly, evil deeds like theft, robbery, falsehood, backbiting, immorality, pleasure seeking, and so forth can also be perceived. Anyone who has eyes to see will be able to distinguish a good deed from a bad one. Inward deeds, however, are invisible. No one can see vices like pride, jealousy, malice, love for fame, love for wealth, ostentation, parsimony, covetousness, and so on. If anyone be involved in these sins, but is regular in the performance of outward virtuous deeds, then no one will be able to say how corrupt the inner state of such a person is. Rather, everyone will consider him a God-fearing and pious person. Obviously, such inward vices remain concealed from the sight of others, but what causes concern in that often not even the person involved in those vices is unable to ascertain his own state, because often they resemble virtues or permissible states, either in their appearance or effort. For instance, pride and sense of personal honor are closely resemble one another. Pride, however, is unlawful, whereas preserving one's personal honor is a requirement of the Sharia. Jealousy and longing resemble each other. Jealousy, however, is prohibited, whereas longing is permissible, rather desirable according to the Sharia, because it means that if anyone witnesses a person's good fortune or a certain blessing, he becomes desirous of acquiring the same. There's nothing wrong with this. Jealousy, on the other hand, in other words, desiring that a person be deprived of his good fortune, is contemptible. Similarly, all those inward vices closely resemble certain virtues or praiseworthy attributes, so the person involved in such vices is often under deception. He considers pride to be his sense of personal honor, and he considers jealousy to be longing for blessing. And thus he is not in the least worried about his inner state of affairs. The need of a murshid or spiritual mentor in order to reform one's inner state. In general, it is not possible to reform one's inner state unless one commits oneself to such a sheikh who is fully able to distinguish between virtues and vices, who fully understands the intricacies of the human soul, who himself strives to avoid all kinds of spiritual vices, and who also guides others in this regard. Then one must fully accept the assessment made by one's sheikh, leaving aside one's own theories and ideas, and one must act according to his instructions, just like a patient who consults a doctor or a hakim regarding any ailment of his. A patient too accepts the diagnosis and strictly follows the doctor's instructions concerning medication and diet. Even a doctor or hakim, when sick, leave aside their own diagnosis and rather follow the course prescribed by their physician. Matters concerning the soundness or corruption of outward deeds can be inquired from a scholar, or one can oneself acquire such knowledge by studying relevant books. But in case of matters pertaining to reformation of one's inner state, it does not suffice to read any book, even though one may have fully understood its contents, because usually it is not possible to reform oneself without following an accomplished spiritual mentor or sheikh. It might, however, at times happen that Allah Almighty causes a person to succeed in this regard without having adopted this mode of action, but that is rather an exception rather than the rule. Imam Ghazali's suggestion concerning reformation of one's inner state. Allah Most High has granted Hujjatul Islam, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, a peculiar understanding of the intricacies of the human soul. Along with the remarkable talent of instruction and moral grooming, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh holds that there are 4 ways to recognize one's evil traits. The first way is to follow an accomplished sheikh. The best way to become aware of one's evil traits and to rectify the same is to entrust oneself to such a person who strictly abides by the holy law and all its injunctions, whether these be related to outward or inward deeds, who is able to recognize virtues and vices, and who is able to suggest suitable remedy for various spiritual ailments. A satanic misgiving and its reply. People tend to say things like where to find such a sheikh in times as corrupt as ours. Fraud, deceit, ostentation, and show have become so rampant that it is simply not possible to distinguish between an impostor and a genuine spiritual mentor. By causing people to recall countless instances anyone was deceived by so-called scholars, saints, or dervishes, the shaitan wants people to lose hope and become desperate. Such people frequently recite this verse, it's a verse of poetry, saying, O God, where are your simple-minded servants supposed to go now that fraud, lust for power, and cunningness have become the dervish's way of life? Keeping in view these corrupted times, the above complaint made by Allama Iqbal is neither unjustified nor inappropriate. But it would be wrong to take this verse to mean that nowadays there is no hope for betterment of one's affairs, that there is no way to reform oneself, therefore one is at liberty to do as one pleases. It needs to be seen whether only scholars and divines are affected by this degeneration of morals, whether only they have become corrupt and wicked, or whether the same holds true for other segments of society. Who does not know that in spite of countless breakthroughs in the field of medicine, in spite of the latest diagnostic devices and surgical instruments, and in spite of having highly effective medicines, there is hardly any doctor who is indeed an expert in his profession and through whom people actually get cured? Among thousands of lawyers or attorneys, only a handful seem to be trustworthy and reliable. Among hundreds of thousands of traders, only a selected few are honest in their dealings. And among hundreds of thousands of artisans, there seem to be some who are skilled, but yet no one prefers his own opinion over a doctor's diagnosis, nor does anyone dispense of a lawyer's services when it comes to any legal proceedings, nor has anyone stopped to deal with traders, nor with the artisans and craftsmen. Rather, people carefully choose some suitable person whom they entrust in their affairs. Nowadays, neither pure butter is available in the markets, nor milk, nor flour, nor spices, yet but yet, no one has heard of anyone who stopped using any of these items, who stopped purchasing flour and started eating anything else instead. Rather, he tries hard to find unadulterated, pure foodstuff, and somehow he succeeds. Why not proceed similarly regarding matters of religion? After all, Allah Most High has promised us that there shall be men of truth who have attained spiritual perfection until the day of judgment, and anyone who sincerely looks for them shall find them for sure. Says Allah Almighty in the glorious Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. O ye who believe, O you who believe, be careful of your duty to Allah and be with the truthful ones. Sadiqeen, in other words, truthful ones, refers to such people, and this is the essence of saintliness. Imam Razi rahmatullah alayh, in his Tafsir Kabir, has written the following concerning this ayah. He says, this injunction to be with the truthful is directed to come until the day of judgment. It also constitutes a promise from Allah Most High that there shall always be true men of Allah among the Muslims. No age shall be devoid of such pious souls. From this, Imam Razi further concludes that the consensus of the Muslim Ummah concerning any matter is a valid legal proof, for if there shall always be truthful ones among the Muslims, then it is not possible that the whole community should agree on error, for true men of Allah do not fall into error. It is true that this is an age of deterioration and decline with with regard to everything, especially goodness and virtue. Fraud, deceit, ostentation have become rampant, whereas originality and authenticity are rare. In the golden era of Islam, there was an abundance of goodness, piety, sincerity, and virtue. One could find goodness wherever one turned. Today, one has to look hard to find men of Allah, and even then they seem not to be of the same caliber as in the days of the pious ancestors. Allah Most High, however, has tremendously increased the reward for enduring all these hardships. In one hadith has been mentioned that Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, towards the end of time, a person doing good shall get a reward equivalent to 50 men of virtue. The companions radiallahu anhum asked, O Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a reward equal to 50 men of his time or of our times? To this the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, no, he shall get a reward equal to 50 of you. Just think, anyone who remains steadfast in this age of tribulation, anyone who continues to do good, shall get a reward equal to 50 Abu Bakrs, Omars, and other companions. The recompense for their efforts has been increased because it has become so difficult to attach oneself to any pious, righteous servant of Allah, and because preserving on goodness has become as difficult as holding burning embers in one's hand. One more shaitani misgiving. While looking for a shaykh, the accursed shaitan again deceives people. He deludes them into thinking that the conditions of the pious ancestors and high remarking saints of days gone by, which are described in various books, are the standard of saintliness even today. So when people begin to look for someone who matches these descriptions and consequently fail in their endeavor, they lose hope and give up all thoughts of self-reformation. The misgiving here is that deterioration and degeneration are unavoidable with the passage of time. The Quran and the sacred ahadith too bear witness to this fact. Today, neither men like Abu Bakr, Umar, or other companions are born, neither shall there be saints like Junaid and Shibli, nor can one hope to find someone like Ma'ruf Karhi and Dhunnun Misri. Anyone who begins his search with such lofty ideals in his mind will surely remain deprived. However, if one tries to find someone fulfilling the minimum requirements of saintliness, he then will easily find true men of Allah who have attained spiritual perfection. How to recognize a wali of Allah. The friends of Allah can be recognized by a number of factors. Number one, basic knowledge of religion, which means as much knowledge as suffices to discharge one's religious obligations, even though such a person cannot be an attested scholar. Number two, being regular in the observation of one's religious duties, not neglecting any of the fara'id or wajibat, and abstinence from everything unlawful, and an immediate repentance in case one commits a mistake in this regard. Number three, keeping oneself engaged in divine remembrance, whether this consists of reciting various tasbihat and awrad, or if done merely to seek the goodwill and pleasure of Allah, imparting sermons or writing concerning any religious topic. Number four, having permission from any shaykh who himself has attained spiritual perfection to counsel and instruct others with regard to reformation of their inner state. And five, the fifth sign of waliullah, of a wali of Allah, is that if one spends a few days in his company, one inclines towards the hereafter and begins to abhor the frivolities of this worldly life. So if anyone fulfills these criteria, then such a person shall suffice as a spiritual guide and mentor. And if one happens to have found several men matching this description, then one should attach oneself to the one to whom he feels the most attracted. The second way of reforming one's inner state. If one could not succeed in finding a spiritual mentor who fulfills the above criteria, then according to Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, such a person should turn to any sincere and well-wishing friend of his, asking them what kind of vices and evil traits are perceived in him. Then one should concern oneself with the rectification of the weaknesses pointed out by them. Once Sayyidina Umar al-Faruq radiallahu an approached Sayyidina Salman Farsi radiallahu an and said to him, you are my brother. So tell me, what weakness do you see in me? Sayyidina Salman radiallahu an was first reluctant to reply due to his respect for Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an. But when the latter insisted, he said, I perceive two weaknesses in you. The first is that there is more than one dish on your tablecloth. Such was not the habit of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second is that you keep one suit of clothes above your requirement. One you wear at night and the other you wear during the day. To this Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu replied, don't worry, these two shall be remedied right now, inshaAllah. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu and all other pious ancestors of this ummah were very concerned regarding any weakness of character, and they would waste no time in remedying the same. Once a foreign delegation came to meet Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. In order to honor the guests of the place of assembly, a place of assembly was duly made up and decorated. As soon as the formalities were over, Sayyidina Umar picked up a leather bag, went to a well, fetched water, and brought it to an old woman living in his neighborhood. When people asked him, Why did he do so? He replied that today, due to the arrival of a foreign delegation, it was necessary to make the court appear grand and splendid. Therefore, I was worried that this display of pomp and splendor might cause me to develop pride within myself. Therefore, I had to do something to humble myself. This too was a peculiarity of the noble companions and the pious ancestors of this ummah, that they would sympathetically point out each other's weaknesses and shortcomings, without scorning at each other or hurting each other's feelings. Nowadays, finding friends like these is not easy either. If so-called friends perceive a vice in someone, they will tell the whole world about it, but not the person concerned. Such people cannot be considered as friends. One should make sure to befriend only such people who are righteous and sincere. The third way, to reform oneself with the help of one's adversaries. This may be done by carefully listening of what kind of evil traits and vices one has been accused. Thereafter, one ought to do some introspection and analyze one's inner state of being in order to determine how many of those accusations are true and how many of those vices actually exist. Then one should concern oneself with the elimination of those vices. This is what the divines of days bygone used to do. Here comes to my mind an incident concerning a saint of our times, Imam Rabbani Maulana Rashid Ahmed Gangohi, Rahmatullah alayh. During his stay in Khanqa Quddusi Gangoh, when Maulana Gangohi began to deliver discourses on hadith as well as sermons of a reformative nature, during which he would admonish people particularly with regard to shirk and bid'at in its various forms and manifestations. Ahmed Raza Khan Barelwi, who was in those days one of the foremost propagators of innovations, brought up all kinds of accusations, false charges, and calumnies against Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayh. Using extremely foul language in these various pamphlets and writings, Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayh had Maulana Muhammad Bakhsh to read those pamphlets to him, as he had almost lost his sight in his old age. Answering of these letters and other correspondence was done by his disciple Maulana Muhammad Yahya Nadwi Rahmatullah alayh. Since these pamphlets comprised almost vulgar abuses, malicious propaganda, and scandalous accusations, it was not easy for Maulana to read them out to his Shaykh Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayh. He therefore did not submit those pamphlets to his mentor for a few days. After a couple of days, Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayh asked Maulvi Yahya, "What's the matter? Does our friend no longer remember us? Since quite some time I have not received any of his pamphlets." Maulana replied, "Sir, we have received several of his pamphlets, but when I went through them I found that they contained nothing but abuses and calumnies. So I thought, why should I cause you anguish by reading them out to you?" Such were Maulana's own considerations. But then there were such pious, noble servants of Allah who had sacrificed all their belongings and desires, their honor and esteem for the sake of their Lord and Creator. Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi said to him, "Don't do that. Read out to me whatever pamphlet you receive. I want to hear what he writes, because maybe there is something true about whatever he charges me with, so I can correct myself." And the fourth way, whenever one perceives some evil or objectionable trait in anyone else, one ought to do some introspection whether this weakness exists within oneself. And if there be any such apprehension, then one should immediately attempt to correct oneself. This too is a method through which one can reform oneself, and as a matter of fact, one ought to employ all of the above methods, especially the first one, according to one's ability. Wallahu al-musta'an.
So now we are talking about how to work on our souls and remedy the diseases that we have within our souls, and in fact even diagnose them and find out if we do have and what do we have. A person who feels that he has no spiritual disease is the one who is really being deceived the most by shaitan. If I don't find anything wrong within myself, for sure shaitan is deceiving me. Am I so impressed with myself that I don't have nothing wrong with me? There has to be something. I'm not saying to accuse ourselves, but I'm saying to monitor and learn how to monitor ourselves. Because ups and downs are part of the life. And we need to understand where we are right, where we are wrong. The least is where I can improve and be better. Ihsan. Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. There has to be ihsan. And there has to be a better way than this in future. So I need to learn from my experiences, from my ibadah. Today I performed 2 rak'ah salah. I should be able to perform 2 better rak'ahs in future. Today I made dua. I should be able to concentrate more in my dua in future. So there has to be ihsan, there has to be husn that comes to it, that add to the beauty of it. How do I find out these things? How do I rectify my problems? How do I treat my diseases? And really the word treating the diseases will tell us everything about it, and that is there has to be someone that can diagnose these diseases for us, tell us, we can consult the person. So that is the best way, the best way. I normally say, don't live in your deen like an orphan. Like an orphan. A child who doesn't have a father, so there is no one to correct him, and there is none above him. To this child, he lives in a family where it's his mother, maybe he has a sister, and this is a boy who's 8, 9 years old, and according to his understanding, he is the biggest man in the world. Because in the family, there is no other man there. So to him, he is the man. Even mother tells him, you are the man of the family. And sisters tell him, you are my older brother and you are the man of the family. Now he starts feeling, I'm the man of the world. Not just the family. This is what happens when we don't have anyone above us. Find a person that you can consider to be above you. If we fail to find that person, there is a major problem with us. That no one can be above me. I'm above everyone else. There is no one who can correct me. There is no one in the world that I could listen to. One of our mashayikh, Shaykh Iqbal rahimahullah, he used to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He have made physical distances very short for us, like you have to travel from here to Mecca. Nowadays it's 12 hours. In those days it was a week from Mecca to Medina. And now from here all the way there is 12 hours. So he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cut down on physical distances. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have also cut down on spiritual distances also. Which means with a short journey you can accomplish a lot. And at the same time, you may not find a person in your neighborhood, but you would find another person maybe in another town, another close by area, or nowadays even in another country. It's only a phone call, consulting someone. I'm having this problem. I'm missing my salah. I'm not able to do tahajjud. I cannot concentrate in my salah. I don't feel like giving any charity. Whatever we feel, we need someone that we can consult, and when this person tells us something, okay, this is not right. You need to correct this. You need to fix this. We should be in a position of listening to the person. A lot of time, I'm going to consult this person as long as he makes me feel good. And the sheikh, whoever you talk to, he has to make you feel good. He also knows that I have to make him feel good in order for him to stay connected, otherwise he's going to run away from me. Then there is no sheikh really. He's not a sheikh. So it has to be someone who can tell us that you're wrong here, you need to correct yourself. You need to fix the situation. I'll tell you a practical example. A lot of time in the masjid, people come to us after salah, especially after Jum'ahs. Brother, make dua for me. I missed my fajr so many times. Or brother, make dua for me. I'm doing this wrong, or I'm involved in this haram. And we say, MashaAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. May Allah make it easy for you. May Allah forgive you. And we give them some dua, and that's the end of the story. But someone that is connected to you, now that person comes and he says, make dua that I have been missing fajr. What? You have been missing fajr? And he just want me to make dua. Come sleep in the masjid. Now you tell them the treatment. It's not okay. He's going to make the dua and I'm going to wake up for fajr. You're not going to wake up by my dua. You need to wake up yourself. We'll make dua for you to help you with this, but you need to take the right steps in correcting yourself. So with these type of people, yes, if you know that is someone who would listen to you, you tell them the right treatment. I'm having an issue between me and my wife, and she always does this. So you ask him, how about you? What do you do to her? But in the masjid, normal musalli, make sure, make dua, we are having issues with my wife, may Allah make it easy for you. Done. But someone that will accept the treatment, you tell him, no, you are wrong. You need to do this. You need to change this. You need to have this. So, there has to be someone in our life. Think about it. Who do you have in your life? Someone that if he would tell you you are wrong, even if you are 100% sure that I'm right, if he tells me I'm wrong, I'm going to accept it. I will submit. Is there a person? If there is a person, then it's really a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just like having that fatherly figure that will tell us, son, you got to do this. That's it. Fight between the two brothers, and you're right 100%. Dad says, no, you just sit over here. Let him do what he's doing. Okay, submit. That figure has to be there. And this is, of course, even if father is there, this is religious figure who is a fatherly figure for our religious affairs and for our behaviors, who can tell us what is right and what is wrong, and we would listen and submit. This is one of the most important things in our life. Until we find that type of person, and in fact, even with that, it will be good to have those friends that are of the same concern as we are. And as we were talking in Jummah about ikhlas, really you need to have friends that are mukhlisin in their friendship. This is ikhlas in the friendship. And ikhlas in the friendship is a topic that great scholars of Islam have written books about this. Importance of having friends, and friends that are mukhlisin, that are sincere, and that are sincere in their friendship. In their friendship with you. When they find out anything bad about you, they don't go out and spread it out. They go and talk to people about it. They try to, and they don't just stay quiet on it. They come and help you. They talk to you about it. They help you fix it. They do whatever they can to get you out of the situation of haram, of sin, of wrong. This is nush. This is nush likulli Muslim. That this is being well-wisher to others and being mukhlis in your friendship. Having those friends is a big blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I haven't seen you in the masjid for a long time. Oh, because of exam. No. I'm going to come and pick you up. You need those friends. Number 3, then, and this is also very important, looking at what your enemies have to say about you. And look at them with sincerity, not with the intention of taking revenge. With sincerity. Maybe some of the things they're saying are true. So I'm going to work on fixing myself from that angle. And of course, we all have our shortcomings, and our enemies are the best to point them out for us. Many times they will be saying, they may say 100 things that are totally wrong. But there may be one thing that where you can work on yourself and fix it. So take advantage of that. And there is a poem in Arabic that says, that one of the great qualities of a human being, that his enemies can count his mistakes. His enemies can count his mistakes. When your mistakes are so little that your enemies can count them, oh, he has 5 wrong things, that means you're really doing good. That if an enemy is saying 5, there may be only 1 or 2 maybe, or none. But when enemies can count, that's a blessing. That alhamdulillah, Allah save you from having thousands. And the other benefit, subhanallah, other benefit of having such enemies, as another point says, وَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ نَشْرَ فَضِيلَةٍ طُوِيَتْ أَطَاحَ لَهَا لِسَانَ حَسُودِ. That through this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring your good deeds out. When enemies talk about you, people will find out more about you. Anyway, so having friends that are sincere. And then looking at enemies and what they have to say about you, and correct ourselves if there is anything that we find that needs correction. And number 4, when we see people doing wrong, rather than looking down at them and, okay, this person is this, and this, judging people, look at yourself in that mirror. Maybe I may be doing the same thing and I don't realize it. So look at yourself. Am I doing this or something similar? So let me fix myself. So let people to be your mirror. When there is something wrong there, and you start looking at yourself, maybe I'm doing something similar or same thing. Let me look at myself and fix my faults and my mistakes.
So inshallah we'll break now. Salah is at 1:15. So in the meantime, you can take the opportunity to maybe get up, walk around, use a wet washrobe, make wudu again. After the salah, for everyone who's here for this program, there's lunch. For the men, it'll be up on the 3rd floor. For the women, it'll be on the 1st floor. And then after that, we're on break until 3 p.m., till the next session. So 3 p.m. inshallah. In that meantime, just keep in mind the purpose that we're here for. We're not here to just waste time. So during that break time, I'm not saying that's not saying don't relax, but try to use the time wisely. As Shaykh was saying, that mashallah in this gathering is one of the best places that you will find mukhlisin in friendship. So if there's someone here you don't know, introduce yourself, meet each other. You may perhaps meet someone who will go on to be that mukhlis friend of yours for the rest of your life. And again, if there's any other little things that you need or even big things that you need, I'm here. Asim Bhai as well has been helping out. Anything that we can accommodate or help you, inshallah, let us know. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.